Three sets of paw prints in a Gloucestershire garden, all more than 2 inches wide. Deep, unexplained gashes in the hide of a Herefordshire cow. And sheep in Leicestershire virtually skinned from the inside out. A creature prowling through a brickyard in Shropshire. Is this evidence of big cats living wild in the Midlands? And if so, do they pose a danger to us all? I met up with one of a growing number of police officers who are now taking the subject of big cats seriously. Inspector Neil Hughes is responsible for investigating wildlife crime in Leicestershire. But in the last few years, he's also begun collating sightings and reports from local farmers of what appear to be leopards roaming the countryside. This is a lovely site, this Iron Age hill fort. Why have you brought us here?
Well, we could call what you can see from this hill fort East Midlands big cat country. From this point we could see probably 20 or 30 places where the big cat has been seen.
And what is the official police line?
We only become involved because people need to tell somebody about it. The police are a 24-hour organisation. We would become heavily involved if there was a massive problem of livestock killed. Our main concern obviously is safety of the public.
What does it actually look like?
All the reported sightings are, it's big and black, about the size of an Alsatian dog with a long curved tail.
So who are the suspects? Lions and tigers aren't serious options, they're too big. But there are a variety of other exotic creatures like the smaller jungle cats and ocelot. And then increasing in size, lynx, puma, also known as cougar or mountain lion, even one of the world's most feared hunters, the leopard, in its black form known as the panther.
I don't believe there are panthers running around. The food source is very important to any big cat. We get the odd report of a cat or a supposed cat pulling down sheep, the odd calf. If the food source is there, the cat will remain in the area. It won't go until the food source is exhausted, and that we're not getting those sort of reports.
Peter Hellier runs boarding kennels near Melton Mowbray, but she also helps run safaris in Zimbabwe. She's familiar with the habits of what hunters refer to as the Big Five: elephant, buffalo, rhino, lion and leopard.
The guys that I go out with use a .458 Magnum. It's a big rifle. Admittedly, that's got to stop elephant and buffalo, but even if they're only hunting big cats, that's what they use. You have to be fairly accurate to shoot a big cat. You've got to kill it. There's absolutely no point in wounding it. If you wound it, you've got a really dangerous animal on your hands, and somebody has got to go out and kill it.
Big cat sightings are not confined to the countryside. There have been 5 near Oakham Station in the recent past. In September 1998, Bob Viney, a local businessman and former squadron leader, stopped his van to watch a big black cat crossing the road.
I found my brain going and taking snapshots of this animal, the tail, the S-shaped tail, the body, the length of the body, curved, the rounded head of a cat as opposed to the angular head of a dog, the paws, the rather large padded paws, all of it all added together to be a large cat. And we're not talking of a large domestic cat, we're talking of something like a panther.
And where did it go?
It came straight across to the fence, and as you can see, the fence is fairly solid all the way, but there was a hole just here, and it went straight to that hole and straight through. It had been here before.
A few miles away from Oakham, on the other side of Rutland Water, is Ketton Quarry, home to what locals call the Beast of Rutland. This is one photograph of what some say is a panther, others dismiss it as a big dog. In August 1998, farmer's daughter Edith Andrew came across some paw prints. Barry Bedford is the quarry manager at Ketton, where workers and security men have had several sightings of the big cat. So has anybody actually told you what the print is?
No, they haven't. So we had a local policeman that's always interested in it. He believed it was a large dog.
What do you think?
Well, all I can say is if it's a large dog, the actual prints that we saw, this is a cast of one. There was 2 together. and the distance between the front and the back pair was 7 feet, as if it was bounding along.
There's a lot of wind noise here, but there's also the drone of these huge excavators, the big vehicles you've got. You wouldn't imagine a shy creature, a panther, staying around here.
No, you wouldn't, but then there is some great areas for it to hide in. We have the triple SI wood just behind us, with a lot of loose limestone in, so if you was going through there, no doubt if it saw you, you'd never see it.
David and Nigel Spencer are a father and son team who've become somewhat obsessed by the mystery of the big cats.
And this animal ran across the road in front of him, and he flashed his lights, and it still carried on across the road and jumped a 6-foot fence.
Their interest followed David's close encounter 5 years ago with what he firmly believes was a panther-like animal 4 miles from Oakham, which almost ran into him while he was out walking his dog. He now believes the animals are breeding.
If we look at Leicestershire alone, there's certainly between 5 and probably 7 animals coming and going in Leicestershire. And the distance across Leicestershire isn't that great for an animal of that size, so they can easily mate. And apparently the male covers 3 territories, 3 female territories, so the female's territory is quite a bit smaller.
What are these animals actually eating?
Most of the time they're taking rabbits and small deer, things like that. Very, very rarely that they'll take farm animals. They will take sheep. We had this situation in November last year. We had 3 full-grown lambs taken over a 3-week period, as one a week. And basically the animal was stripped completely overnight, decapitated. Often the head was found in a completely different field. All that was remaining was the fleece and the ribcage, completely licked clean.
2 years ago, Nigel set up the Panther Watch website to coordinate sightings across the county. It's revolutionised the search for the big cats.
It's made it a lot easier because people can now contact me straight away through email. Basically, the site has a map giving the latest sightings and links into just other parts as well. There's a picture of a paw print on here as well. There's a page for that. We link into other sites as well.
Following one of the web links, I journeyed to Ashby de la Zouche. Mark Henson has his own award-winning website, and along with factual sightings, he hears more off-the-wall stories like this one from a Lincolnshire lorry driver.
He came across this area that's been cordoned off by the police, and there was something there like an animal's corpse, a dead animal. It was nothing like I'd ever seen, no native animal. Definitely not a dog or, say, a deer, but he was absolutely certain it was a big cat, possibly a black leopard, a panther. It looked like this dead animal's corpse was being dragged off by the authorities. They didn't want the public to see what was going on.
A short journey took us to Moira on the Derbyshire border, the site of the former Donisthorpe Colliery. It's an area crisscrossed by abandoned railway lines. It's also home to wildlife ranger Jonathan O'Farrell, who one morning saw something unusual from his bedroom window.
It was black or very dark, and it was running across the field very fast. It takes me about a minute to walk across that field. This, well, as I know it was now, cat, ran across the field in about, well, less than 10 seconds. It almost seemed to skim across the field in about 10 or 12, just like a wave almost, very, very graceful. And then it was gone.
Since 1992, Leicestershire and Rutland Panther Watch have recorded some 60 sightings a year in the county. 7 have come from police officers. In July last year, it was the turn of motorway patrol sergeant Steve Johnson. Just after dawn, he pulled off the M1 in his patrol car onto the slip road of the A46. This is the first time he's been willing to talk on television about what he saw that morning.
Well, I didn't know what it was to start off with, and then I looked, and it was so distinctive, the long black tail. And the actual thing itself was jet black. And it was as though it's trying to catch either a shrew or a rabbit or something in this freshly cut grass. And I pulled up there and I was watching her for several seconds, And then suddenly it was as though she realised that something or somebody was looking at her. And with that, she just took a couple of leaps and bounds and she disappeared behind the mound.
Could it have been a dog?
Oh, definitely not, no. I've been a dog owner for several years and black Labradors of that. I've had 3 or 4 black Labradors, but this was definitely a large black cat, definitely.
Even police helicopters have been called out in the past. Nottinghamshire police took to the air looking for a big cat near Newark, and 18 months ago Staffordshire police launched an aerial hunt after a man reported a lion walking in woods near Tamworth.
He went out of the wood and phoned the police, and the police got the helicopter out and they got the army out and they were searching for a lost lion. It turned out it was my other dog, Samson.
Mistakes then can be made, but are there any local suspects in the frame? Lynx disappeared from our forests in prehistoric times, and another fearsome predator, the wolf, was wiped out in the middle of the 18th century. But what about now? Our native carnivores, foxes, badgers, birds of prey like the buzzard are relatively common, and we still have a native feline, the Scottish wild cat. But could a much larger cat-like species live alongside them? How much meat does an animal like this eat?
About £4 a day. About £4 a day.
So could they be living in the countryside here?
That's 2 rabbits. That's 2 decent sized rabbits. A pheasant, this sort of thing.
And lots of people keep telling us that they often see them near railway lines.
Yes, we've noticed that as well. Imagine the cycle of these animals. A female living wild would probably have a good, quite a good few acres, for territory. She'd be visited by a male, hopefully, if there's one in the area when she came to season. When the cubs mature, probably about 18 months, 2 years old, they disperse. And railway lines, particularly disused railway lines, are an absolute perfect place to move around the countryside unnoticed.
There's only one thing on Barda's mind at the moment, and that is to get more meat. I have to stand at least 2 feet away from the fence here. She can get her paws out, and her claws are as sharp as daggers, and she can be as quick as a rattlesnake. But whatever she is, she's a magnificent beast. It's not surprising that people wanted to own such beautiful animals. In the 60s and 70s, they were viewed as fashion accessories. You could even buy them in Harrods. In the Midlands, this house in Cradley Heath became celebrated as the home of Lado, who made the news when he attacked a visitor who'd unwisely decided to climb over his gate. As Lado got larger, his owner, Lewis Foley, was in constant dispute with the authorities, as his collection grew to include 8 lions and tigers. But he wasn't the only person keeping exotic creatures in the Black Country.
That was left on my doorstep by a very wealthy friend, and he just says look after them, and which he knows they will be looked after anyway. And that's it. I'm trying to get some advice to what they are. I'm really baffled with these.
In 1976, the government introduced the Dangerous Wild Animals Act, bowing to pressure after a child had been bitten by a leopard in a town centre. It now became an offence to own certain animals without an expensive licence and approved caging. Animal owners had to make a choice. They could conform to the new regulations or donate their animals to zoos if any would take them. Failing this, they could have their animals put down. It's accepted that many people chose to release their animals into the wild. Quentin Rose is a professional animal tracker and consultant working with West Mercia and other police forces to alert them to what he sees as a growing population of potentially dangerous animals. He believes there could be over 100 big cats living wild in the UK. He's identified areas of reliable sightings: 32 for puma, 27 for panthers, 10 for lynx and 6 for jungle cat. His particular interest is the area between Redditch and Worcester.
There's certainly 70 sightings which are definite sightings and about 30 which I'm not too sure about.
And some of them very close to police headquarters.
Yes, well in fact they are coming into the towns in the early hours of the morning. They're being seen by police officers firemen, milkmen, people like that who were around about that time.
Quentin took me to a field in Worcestershire where a farmer had recently called him out to look at a dead lamb.
I came out to do a post-mortem on the sheep the following morning and confirmed it had a big cat attack. It was a single crushing bite to the throat, claw lacerations on the body, and a single hole just punched right through the ribs where the cat had hit the sheep. I identified the back left footprint of a leopard at the site of the kill and found another front right footprint of a leopard in the wood. I had a search around the other woods and couldn't find any other signs and went back home. As soon as I arrived home, the farmer was on the phone to say that the second lamb had just disappeared. I came out and tried to find the other lamb, and as I was walking through the wood, I heard something crashing off through the woods and then the cough of a leopard. It's a sound I've heard hundreds of times working in zoos, and it cut through the woods like a knife. It was about 200-300 yards away, and it was just warning me that it was there, it had food, and not to go any closer.
With so many sheep about, attacks on cattle would seem unlikely. Yet in 1995 it seems to have happened to a cow at Pembridge in Herefordshire, the biggest animal in Britain to have been attacked so far.
I'm talking about cuts that are half-inch deep, like as if you had a standing knife cutting a lorry tyre. Not just your normal, they're barbed wire or going against a stick or a gate. She'd got marks raked down like that, 1.25 inches across, 18 inches long, right down there, across her back and down here.
So what's been the effect on you, Norman?
I had big cat fever. It's a thing, as people say, it's one of the things that does frighten you and jerks you into a situation. I saw this blood, I smelt the blood. I'll never forget the state of the cow, what had happened to this animal, unexplained. I was absolutely frightened for myself and my family because we calve cows in these fields. We think an animal is stalking the herd.
Local vet John Horlock was called in to examine and treat the cow. He visited the scene of the crime, and several eyewitnesses told him they'd seen a big cat in the area that morning.
We found what we thought were cat paw prints in some of the cow pats, which were subsequently identified by the assistant warden at Bewdley Safari Park as cat prints. They were about 4 inches across. I don't know of any dogs with feet that big, and I certainly don't know of any dogs which would have made that sort of wound on a cow. When we went and walked into the herd to have a look at the rest of them, whilst cows are mainly curious, these were much more aggressive. They did gather round much closer than I would have expected and were much more upset. The milk yield of the herd dropped 10% that night.
Any reports in recent months of sightings of such an
I
animal?
haven't heard of any recently. We did get one last winter where somebody found a dead sheep up a tree. Now, having spoken again to Bewdley, they say that only leopards leave their prey up trees, and that again is consistent. It was too high up a tree to be anything else.
Our investigations took me north to Shropshire. In the area west of Ludlow, there have been reports of big cat sightings for some years, and in November last year, local farmer Andrew Morgan returned home after a night out to be told that the farm dogs had been restless and that his terrier Rusty was missing.
So I just got the torch out and went round the fields, and I came back round the house and I shone the torch round the field. I saw the sheep that were in the field, they were down the bottom, all huddled together, and shone the torch on round, and Rusty here was crouched on the ground, and this rather large cat was sat on its back legs. They seemed to be playing with one another at the time, but as soon as I put the torch on him, he just ran straight, and before he jumped over the gate, he just sat back down and watched me again.
It's a wonderful area. Why do you think it's so suited to an animal like a panther or whatever?
It's sort of, he's got no predator in this area, so not only that, he's got plenty of game animals around. There's pheasants, there's deer, there's rabbit. He's in heaven, really.
The Midlands is no stranger to unusual wildlife. Wallabies have been living in the Staffordshire moorlands since the war, but there are without question smaller wild cats also living in Britain. A leopard cat was shot by a farmer near Dartmoor in 1988, and this cat was found dead near Richard's Castle in Shropshire a year later. About 3 foot long, it was brought by the Ministry of Agriculture to Ludlow vet Gareth Thomas. He identified it as an Asian jungle cat.
I found out from the post-mortem that it had no particular disease that I was familiar with. It had injuries to its back and ribs, which indicated to me an accident, and probably a road accident at some point, which had healed but had left it rather unable to fend for itself, or certainly to find food well, to catch food well. And I suspect that it died of starvation, because it was a full-grown male cat, and it should have been about 35 to 40 pounds in weight, and it was only 17 pounds.
Gareth Thomas believes the jungle cat, which has since been stuffed, had been mating with a wild cat in the area, and that this cat, Jasper, from a local farm is the result. Jasper's coat, markings and pointed ears led Gareth to think he was related, and as such a half jungle cat. Gareth's own cat, Tribble, came from a later wildcat litter at the same farm, and he believes it too is from the extended cat family, though because of his long coat, probably from a different father. The hunt for the big cats has been going on for years. This is 1963, when police and army came out in force to hunt the famous Surrey puma. Not surprisingly, it went to ground. The next big cat flap was in Exmoor, wild and lonely with excellent cover for a large predator with a taste for lamb. In 1983 there was an outbreak of sheep kills, over 80 in 3 months. With growing clamour from local sheep farmers, commandos with rifles and night sights were deployed in Devon's lanes. Newspapers put a price on the beast of Exmoor, but the threat of bounty hunters forced the Marines to pull out without firing a shot. In the early 1990s, the hunt moved to Bodmin Moor, an area rich in farmland and again with plentiful livestock. Many of the sightings were on a farm owned by Rosemary Rhodes, who'd lost 6 sheep in mysterious circumstances. She even thought she'd captured one animal on this video in 1993, but it was later discounted as yet another large domestic cat. In July 1995, the Ministry of Agriculture spent 6 months and £8,000 investigating the claims and came up with this conclusion.
We could find no evidence for the presence of a big cat on Bodmin Moor.
The issue was further muddied when a month later 3 boys found this skull in a river, but it'd been put there by a hoaxer, and it turned out to be part of a hunting trophy. By the early 1990s, big cat reports started to come in from all over the Midlands, from Rutland, Coventry, the Black Country, Bridgnorth and parts of Worcestershire, where in 1993 a local birdwatcher from Inkborough near Evesham took what some people believe are the most convincing pictures yet of the panther in the English countryside.
I looked at it, and through the black and white viewfinder, I thought that's rather a large cat. Filmed it for probably about 27 seconds. And of course I didn't think nothing of it, went home and told the wife, and the wife said, oh, that's a big black cat. And of course now these sightings have come about, I obviously thought there was something in it.
Safari Park head warden Bob Lawrence had been on the trail of the big cats for 2 years and had tried unsuccessfully to trap what later became known as the Beast of Inkborough. Today he's in close daily contact with these much larger big cats, turning out for their breakfast at Bewdley.
We've never actually seen anything. I've seen a reasonable video and one reasonable still picture, which is probably the most baffling thing to me. If these things are as common as the sightings would suggest, given the number of cameras and latterly videos in circulation, I would have thought we'd get far more pictorial evidence than we seem to have to date.
Knowing big cats as you do, Is it possible that they could survive in the English countryside?
Oh, I think so. Pumas almost certainly could, and leopards, possibly jaguars could as well, because we keep getting the sightings of a black cat. That tends to rule out the puma, so we are looking at a melanistic leopard or a melanistic jaguar.
In June last year, another video surfaced. Taken in Telford, it was held by some to be convincing evidence of a large cat living near a brickworks. Pictures had been taken by the firm's security cameras and were sent to the RSPCA for analysis. Footprints at the scene were 3 inches across, and there had been numerous sightings of a large cat in the area. Tom Austin from the RSPCA has spent 20 years researching reports of big cats in Britain. Must be very excited too. So Tom, what are we actually looking at?
We're actually looking at a load of building bricks, which are all on pallets stacked high in a brickyard in Telford. And on the far right here you will see a large cat-type animal will come out. Although it looks black there, I don't believe it is black. You can see it's got quite a large tail.
Any idea of scale?
The scale of it is, if you look at the building bricks behind, each pallet has a set of building bricks, and the one furthest away on the left there is about 3 foot. So each one's about 3 foot wide. So that creature, from the tip of its nose to the tip of its tail, is over 3 foot. Then you've got to add the tail onto that. And if you watch this cat-type creature, his head held low, coming across the concrete, you will see certain ringlets going down the tail. And at the end of the base of the tail, you can see it's quite black and dark. I believe this animal to be a puma, or puma type.
We carried out our own experiment into the sighting. This is exactly 4 foot from nose to tail. Behind us is the pallet, which is about 3 foot wide. Judge for yourself. Could this be just a domestic cat, or is it something else? Using the break in the concrete at the left of the yard as a guide, this split screen would suggest that the cat on the video is smaller and closer to the ground than our 4 foot long cutout. Nonetheless, it is still a very large cat, and may of course not be the one seen elsewhere on the site on more than one occasion. The trail moves south to Gloucestershire, where there have been numerous sightings of big cats in the Forest of Dean by park rangers and local residents. Big cat researcher Danny Nineham's been on the trail of the big cats for several years, and in January last year he found a strange cat by the side of the road.
It was over 2 foot long and over 14 inches high. Big fangs. Once again, it was jet black. Obviously someone had knocked it down. And I'm not claiming it's to your big cats, but it just proves that these feral cats are out there.
Danny spends most of his spare time on the mystery. He has extensive records from all over Gloucestershire and believes that there is more than one animal in the densely wooded Forest of Dean.
A lady rang me and she opened her door to go and get some firewood, and there was 3 of these cats on her doorstep. There was, 6 inches of snow. So she rang me, I rushed over there, and I filmed all the tracks. There was 3 sets of individual tracks coming out of woodland. They led me to a lair where they've been lying up, and I got hair off the brambles where they've been lying up, which we had identified as for belonging to the cat group Felis. And it's just another interesting find, and you've got the lady's testimony as well, stating she saw 3 on 2 occasions as well.
Unfortunately, this is as near as we've come to filming the big cats up close and dangerous. But sightings continue to grow on an almost weekly basis, and the police appear to be convinced that they are out there in our countryside.
I am 99.9% sure it's out there, but it's just for my own benefit. Once I've seen it, then nobody can say to me there's nothing out there.
There are big cats breeding in the Midlands, and sooner or later somebody is going to be killed. And it's about time that the government woke up to that fact and took the matter seriously.